Trusting God is one of the hardest things that I think anyone can do. I think it sounds so simple, but it's actually really hard for all of us to do because we we want control of our lives. We want to be able to be the one that's in control and deciding the outcomes of our lives because we think that we know better, right? And giving that trust to God is difficult because you have to let go. You have to let go of the plans of your life. You have to let go of the fact that the things that you might want right now might not happen, because you're giving trust and power to God over your life, to govern your life. And that means He is deciding if that thing is good for you, you know? So He is deciding whether you have that in your life. Like, you might want £1 million or whatever, but God's not going to give that to you if it's going to destroy you. Why would He do that? He wants the best for you, and it's hard to trust Him when, you might be struggling to pay the bills, whatever, and you're really struggling, and, you just think life would be so much better with £1 million, for example. This is just the example I'm going with, but you get what I'm saying. But God's not going to give you that if it's not what's best for you. Okay, so we need to trust in God. We need to trust that He has the best plan for our lives. And it's difficult, man. And I can speak on my own experiences. Like, I remember exactly where I was. I was in Thailand at the time. And I was on the balcony one night where we were staying. And I was praying. And I said to God, this was kind of the turning point for me where I was really deciding that, I wanted to follow Christ. I wanted to walk down that path. And, as I was praying, I said, Lord, you take the wheel to my life. You take the wheel. I don't want to drive no more. I've tried to do it. I've tried to do things my own way, and it's always led to just ruin and just a mess. My life was a mess at that point. And I was asking God to take over, and I didn't actually realize at the time the type of prayer that I was actually saying. And it wasn't until later where God was kind of revealing to me, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And I don't think I did at the time. As much as I wanted to, I found it hard to. Because, immediately after that prayer, by the time I got home, which was like a week later, there was someone in my life that had been in my life for years, just boom, disappeared. And literally I never heard from them again. But I know, looking back, that they were wrong for me. They were a wrong type of person that I needed to be with or hanging around, and influencing my life. Boom, cut. And it hurt, I didn't want to let go of that person. And then also I lost my job. I got made redundant, a week after saying this prayer, and I was a bit like, yo, what's all this about? Like, my life's getting worse, and that's when it's hard. And that's when, for that season of my life, and you might be in that season as well, God is testing you, and He's saying you, do you trust me? Look at Job. Job went through all of these horrible things. His life got destroyed, but still he trusted in God. Still he had faith in God. He didn't understand it, but he still had faith. And during that period, it was a really hard time for myself. Like, I found it really hard because I was kind of hoping and expecting, you give God the keys to your life and things will get better. But in reality, they actually got worse. And it was kind of like He had to take me right back bring me to my knees pretty much, to build me up again from there, you know. And it was like he was just cutting everything off, chopping off things in my life that had no value to me anymore. And while that's happening, during that process, it's so hard to trust him, because you just want, you just want something good to happen almost. And I remember I went on a walk by myself, and there was this giant cross on top of the hill. It's somewhere in in Yorkshire, somewhere in England. I can't remember what it's called, but I somehow found it on Google, and I thought, you know what, I'm going there. It was one of my days off. I went there, and my days, the whole way to the top, I was ranting at God. I was telling him, what are you doing? You're destroying my life. I've gave you the keys to my life, and look what you've done. You've destroyed it. And I got to the top, and I sat by this giant cross, and I whipped up my journal, and I just sat there, and I thought, I'm just going to write the first thing that I feel like God is saying to me. And I hadn't really read much of the Bible at that point, but I knew a few verses here and there, not off by heart, but I'd heard a few. And I wrote down, lean not on your understanding. And it wasn't until later that I found out that, of course, that was Proverbs. I've got it here. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. So, and I want to focus on that is, it's hard to trust him. It's hard to let go, but we need to, man. We need to. It's calling us to, and think, we worship a God that is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. We should trust somebody, or trust the God that has the vantage point of being in our past, our present, and our future. So, he sees everything. He sees our life, and he wants us to flourish. He knows what's best for us more than we do. And it's hard to admit that. It's hard to accept that, because everybody has a plan for their life and how they want it to go. And if it doesn't go that way, then, you start to deem it as unsuccessful, or you start to look at yourself as a failure. But God doesn't do that. God wants you to flourish, And I'm going to go to the famous verse, everybody's famous verse. Everybody loves this verse. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And that's what we need to hold on to, guys. Like, it's hard to do that. It's hard to trust him at times, especially if, things going poorly. You might have lost your job. Relationships around you might be failing. You might be dealing with health issues. Whatever that might be, But you have to trust that he still has a future for you, He still has plans for you, and that he wants you to flourish. And it might not seem like it in the moment, because it's hard to see it in the moment sometimes. But that's why it's good to think up for God that is already in your future, He already sees your future. Future of plans, future plans for you to flourish, So I know it's difficult. I know it's hard. Like, I've definitely struggled with this myself. And it is tough. It is tough to let go, because we just want to control our lives. Especially now, we just want to micromanage everything. And it's hard when you're doing that, and then still something bad happens. And it's hard to just let go and submit to God, and just let go. You know, it's hard, it's difficult, and it might be a painful process. I know it certainly was for me. It was a long process of, I'd probably say, a year. You know, a year of my life where it was just, it felt like I was being tested almost to see it. And my pastors used to keep saying this to me when I'd go to them and tell them about what was going on in my life, and they'd say, they feel like God is trying to tell you something. Like, do you trust me? He's trying to ask you, do you trust me? So I put that question on you. You know, God is saying to you, do you trust me? You know, and despite what's going on in your life, despite what's been happening, do you trust him? I hope you do, and I believe it's the wisest thing you could do is trust him. You know, he wants what's best for you. He wants you to flourish. And I believe if you put your trust in him, you're going to have a beautiful life. And you're going to have the peace of God, knowing you don't have to worry about everything around you, because you know that there is a good God that is in control of your life, and that is leading you and making sure that you live in peace and harmony. So I hope that helped, guys. It's tough, I know, but we'll get through it, and just, you know, keep leaning in, especially in the hard times. Keep leaning in, keep putting more trust in God. As difficult as it is, but he will reward the faithful. All right. Good luck. God bless. I'll see you later.